3 hours ago, a disturbing series of events began. Waking up in my modest dwelling on the outskirts of town, I was disturbed by a faint noise coming from the corridor. Armed with a piece of rebar, I cautiously approached the source. To my shock, a man dressed in a black robe materialized in front of me. His face was aged and distorted with deep wrinkles, an otherworldly pallor, and an unsteady gait that spoke of an age in excess of 90 years. As I alighted on my surroundings, he fixed his huge black eyes on me and strode swiftly forward. Intending to defend myself, I swung the rebar but saw it go through him, dispelling any illusion of a corporeal form. Overcoming the urge to faint, I smashed the window and fled the haunted house. After a short run, I looked back and saw that my house was already far away. Gathering my courage, I headed toward my wife's house. Her absence said one thing: excessive drinking had forced her to go to her mother's. I had to walk through the cemetery to take a shortcut. The gruesome scenes at home wouldn't let go, but urgent business kept me going. In the dimly lit space of the cemetery, I noticed two silhouettes performing a kind of ritual at the grave. Trying to pass una said, I inadvertently alerted them. Their gaze fixed on me. My heart raced, and whether mischievous teenagers or ghostly entities, I hastily retreated. As events unfolded, I moved in bewilderment down the country road toward my wife's supposed location. Footsteps behind me made me turn, and a tall, gaunt figure with indistinct facial features appeared before me. My attempts to speed up proved futile, and as he approached, I turned down another road. In a surreal collision, the figure passed through me, increasing my anxiety. Collapsing onto the road, I took a short breather and continued on my way. Upon arriving at the home of my wife and her mother, I was met with emptiness. Assuming their imminent return, I settled down on the bed. As I sat in front of the television, a noise at the front door of the house caused me to investigate. Two figures and the mysterious man from my house loomed outside the door. In fear, I bolted the door with the nightstand. The knocking stopped, replaced by a disconcerting procession around the house, peering in every window. The key in the lock indicated that they had found a spare hidden under the flower bed. Attempts to resist proved futile as they entered the house. Yet there was an inexplicable turn of events. The intruders, seemingly oblivious to my presence, scoured the house, while I stood in their midst. My wife's familiar voice broke the eerie silence. In a surreal exchange, she urged them to leave, claiming it was time to leave. Surprised, I intervened, but my pleas went unheeded. The entities acknowledged her, stating that it was late and time to leave. Unable to comprehend the unfolding scenario, I tried to divert their attention. The impact of the board shattered a vase, which caught their attention. Their decision to walk away, leaving me alone, puzzled me. The man from my ghostly encounter reappeared, challenging me to face the inevitable. It dawned on me that the uninvited guests in my home, including my wife, had come to lay me to rest. The creature I was evading was a conduit to the afterlife I had unknowingly left 3 hours ago. I am an antique collector, and among the many housewarming gifts I have received, one is particularly memorable. A close friend gave me an antique mirror that was obviously of significant value. The next morning, while organizing my living space, I carefully arranged everything and placed the mirror in the hallway. It added a touch of sophistication. In the evening, sitting in the kitchen, I glimpsed my gift in the hallway, but an uneasy feeling told me it was a passing shadow. Curiosity led me to the mirror, which turned out to be surprisingly clean, a rare occurrence in my house. During the night, I was awakened by a mysterious rustling in the hallway. Armed with a piece of cardboard, I cautiously explored the room but found nothing scary. Convinced that it was a figment of my imagination, I turned my attention to the mirror, which bore inexplicable fingerprints. Attempts to wash them off proved futile, and on closer examination, I found that the marks were not on the surface of the mirror, but behind it. Behind it. Inside. On the other side. Puzzled, I decided not to wait until morning and took the mirror apart. To my amazement, the marks were on the inside. Quickly reassembling the mirror and covering it with a sheet, I took refuge in my friend's house without telling him about the gruesome events. When I returned the next morning, the sheet had been torn off and the mirror was adorned with new footprints. Not knowing what to do, work obligations forced me to pack up and leave. The mirror, placed in the hallway across from the bathroom, held a disturbing secret. Upon entering the bathroom and glancing in the mirror above the sink, I was confronted with a shocking discovery. At first, thinking it was just my reflection, I turned around but found my own image absent. The bathroom seemed empty, and a mysterious silhouette gradually materialized in the mirror, coming closer and closer. Frozen in place, I watched as the man approached, looked at me, and then placed his hand on the mirror and disappeared. Overcome with fear, I walked over to the mirror to find his fingerprints. Believing in the supernatural, I urgently contacted my friend who had given me the mirror. "Remember the mirror you gave me?" I asked. "Where did you get it?" "It was a gift from a neighbor," he replied. When asked about the neighbor's comments, he brushed them off as the ramblings of an eccentric person. He had promised to donate the mirror to a museum, but decided it would make a great housewarming gift. Having found out the neighbor's address, I covered the mirror with a sheet and, neglecting my work duties, went to Marina Alexeyevna, my friend's neighbor. After telling me about her worries, she urged me to get rid of the mirror as soon as possible, warning me against breaking it. Instead, she insisted on taking it to the museum and then telling me the details. Returning home, I found the mirror disturbed again, pondering which museum to go to. Since breaking it was strictly forbidden, I contacted one that agreed to accept it voluntarily. In a hurry, I returned to the hallway where I was greeted by approaching shadows, 5 or 6 in number, growing closer with each passing moment. Hurriedly grabbing a sheet, I realized it was too late. They were already at the mirror. The shadows materialized and fingerprints began to appear on them. With a quick glance, I covered the mirror, grabbed it, and, without bothering to close the door, rushed to the museum, where the staff greeted and thanked me. An hour later, I returned to Marina Alexeyevna. After telling me her story, she invited me to tea in her kitchen. Sitting with a warm cup of tea, I asked her to explain to me the choice of the museum and the prohibition against breaking the mirror. "Here, it won't be broken, and no one will take it home. Everything will be fine," she assured me. Curious, I asked, "And why can't it be broken?" Marina Alexeyevna looked at me seriously and replied, "What would you do if you let them out of the mirror? They would have gotten into our world." Since then, no further incidents have occurred, but I have removed all mirrors from my apartment and now actively avoid them. "Do you see anything behind me?" Lena asked, her eyes pleading for assurance. I pondered how to respond as she stood on the threshold of my apartment, visibly anxious. With nothing discernible behind her, her late-night visit struck me as peculiar. Despite my reservations, I welcomed her inside. "I'm not sure," I began, closing the door. "What exactly should be behind your back?" "It follows me. It's always there, but I never managed to turn around in time to see the creature, though maybe it's for the best." A week ago, after an inebriated return from a friend's bachelorette party featuring a whimsical divination session, I impulsively purchased a Ouija board, defying the advice against using it alone. Alcohol-fueled curiosity led me to conduct a session that concluded with an eerie silence. Suddenly, the room's door closed as if caught in a sudden gust, and a mysterious rustling emanated from the kitchen. Approaching footsteps halted just half a meter away. In panic, I pushed the board away and fled my home, seeking refuge in a hotel. Upon returning, the aftermath revealed broken dishes and the Ouija board ominously displaced. An uncanny presence lingered behind me, intensifying over a week. Days later, my cat's behavior changed, avoiding me while fixating on something unseen. Desperate for a solution, I sought help from priests, psychics, and various experts, all attributing the entity to a spirit summoned during the ritual. Yet none could provide relief. Lena, an avowed atheist, narrated this paranormal ordeal, leaving me dumbfounded. As we approached my cat, it affirmed her account by focusing on an unseen presence behind her. "Come outside for a moment," I suggested to Lena. Alone with the cat, its gaze fixed directly on me, dispelling my skepticism. As we sat down for tea, I inquired about the spirit she had summoned. "Just spirits, any spirits," she replied nonchalantly. Intrigued, we visited a friend with cats, finding all three fixated on something unseen behind Lena. The eerie coincidence began to sway my skepticism. Back home, I noticed a camera on the table near the front door. Wondering if it could capture what animals perceived, I took numerous photos. To my astonishment, a faint shadow appeared, subtle but discernible upon closer inspection. As evening fell, we searched for my grandmother's acquaintance, a healer skilled in severing connections with the supernatural. Though we found her number, it was too late to call, postponing our solution until the following day. Little did we know, luck was not on our side. I remained seated at the table as Lena entered the room. A lamp on the table cast shadows as she passed by. "Wait, look," I said, pointing at the shadows. In that moment, mysticism became a reality to me. "How peculiar, though," Lena began, returning to the table with evident despair. "You can change apartments, run away from home with a ghost. But what do you do when it follows you?" I retrieved a church candle from my room and returned to the kitchen. By the time I reached Lena, the candle had mysteriously extinguished. Sleep was out of the question. Attempting to distract ourselves with conversation proved futile. When the clock struck 3 in the morning, the bulb in the lamp between us exploded. Footsteps echoed in the darkness, but neither of us dared to move. An attempt to turn on the light was thwarted by a hand on my shoulder, a touch I felt distinctly. Something moved beside the table, from side to side, immobilizing us with fear. Summoning courage, I rushed to the light switch. But a moment later, the bulb exploded, leaving us in darkness. However, I saw it. A shadow in the middle of the kitchen. It approached me, standing directly in front, locking eyes with mine. Clutching across, I walked through the apparition, taking Lena's hand and guiding her slowly to the front door. Outside, on a bench, the oppressive presence persisted. Unsure of what to do, I suggested, "Let's go," and led Lena down the dark night street. Despite the absence of streetlights, an unsettling feeling accompanied us. The night streets held no fear of human assailants, as something far more ominous shadowed us. Arriving at the outskirts of town by a solitary wooden house, I said, "We're here. A friend of my grandmother's lives here." Knocking on the door at 5 a.m., it opened after a few minutes, revealing an old lady. "Lydia Arkadyevna," I began. "I'm sorry, but—" "I see," she interrupted. "All 3 of you have come to see me. Come in." Inside, all candles mysteriously extinguished. Lydia Arkadyevna instructed us to sit at the table and hold hands. "Close your eyes and don't open them. It will be better for you," she said, initiating a prayer. Terrified but unable to look away, I watched as Lydia Arkadyevna lit candles, only to have them immediately extinguished. My gaze shifted to Lena, and a second shadow separated from her, advancing toward the mirror. The shadow stopped and locked eyes with me. "Maxim?" Lydia Arkadyevna spoke. "Come to him." In horror, I asked, "What?" "Come to him. He has something to say, or he won't go away." Reluctantly, I approached the mirror. The shadow took my hand, and with its guidance, my index finger began writing something on the mirror. It felt like an external force was controlling my hand. Eventually, the shadow entered the mirror, and lights illuminated everywhere. I sat on the floor by the mirror, relieved. Remembering I had written something, I stood and looked. It said, "Thank you." Lena wept at the table, and Lydia Arkadyevna approached. "Why thank you?" I asked. "The shadow was a dead man, a ghost. Your friend summoned him, but she couldn't complete the ritual. So, the ghost remained. You brought him to me, and we helped him go home. You saved him. From that moment on, everything ceased. Neither Lena nor I were haunted, and she disposed of the Ouija board. Every time I pass by a lamp, I glance at the shadows it casts."